Hey everyone, I'm Mike from HOTO, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at a box cutter that's made by HOTO. If you aren't familiar, HOTO is a household tool brand dedicated to innovating and redefining home tools to align with modern lifestyles. Today we're going to be doing a teardown. We're going to be taking a closer look at some of the plastic parts and metal parts, how they're made, how they're manufactured. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So first off, this is, from what I notice here, it has a few plastic parts. On the exterior, probably polycarbonate, and the first thing I notice is that there's a rope cutter. So if you extend the blade, that exposes an area where you could cut a rope, or string, or twine, or what have you. Then you further extend the blade, that exposes the rest of the knife. And some of the research that I've done is that a nice part with this tail cover piece is that you could actually break off each blade segment using this cover, which I find really nice. One thing that I have trouble with is disposing the spent portions of each blade, even with my other knives, since it's a sharp object and it's treated as hazardous waste, so you still have to find a way to dispose of it properly. If you, similar to my other knife, which is an OLFA, there's a detent piece, and then there's the blade. That's how you would replace it. On my OLFA, however, there is a knob here which allows you to release it past the lock point or the stopping point. This one here is just held on by this cap, and then I'll take my handy HOTO tool set here and remove this inner piece that is held in with this detent. So in addition to this external PVC or PC housing polycarbonate, you have this inner metal guide rail with sort of like a rack feature here that engages with the plastic detent. That gives it that nice click. All right, well, there you have it. We did a complete teardown there. This assembly has 3 plastic parts. So you have the metal, there's like a metal spring detent, which gives it that click feedback, and it holds the blade in that position, followed by this yellow plastic part and this black plastic part. So like I mentioned, there's 3 parts to this sub-assembly on the ratchet. So you got a total of 4 plastic parts, a formed sheet metal part, and a stamp spring. And the blade itself, 7 parts to this assembly. Now that we've done the teardown, I'd like to do a reassembly of all the components. But before I do so, I'd like to take a moment to give you some ideas of the current specs, like the weight. The total weight of the knife is 52 grams. The blade itself is made with an SK5 carbon steel. It's anti-rust coated along with the guide rail as well. There's a total of 8 segments, so as each segment of the blade dulls, you could break it off and you'll have a fresh, sharp blade. Alright, so why don't we go ahead and reassemble this knife. So starting with the guide rail, this goes back into the plastic casing. There's a detent here. Let me just grab my handy HOTO bit set. There's this metal detent here that was, it's a tang that was bent. I can bend it back in so that it doesn't slide out, like so. So there's a little window here for that detent to nest inside. Now that we have the guide rail back into the plastic housing, let's get this handle reassembled. I like that they have this really nice feature where it provides basically a guide where to put this spring detent. So now that we have the guide rail and the blade handle assembled, let's work on the detent subassembly. So immediately what I see here is like a nested feature that captures this detent spring. It snaps in nicely. And then you have this mating feature on the opposing side. So this is a bit tricky because you need to get this black plastic in between the spring and the yellow guide. Just like so. Just like that. So now we have this part reassembled. So blade goes in first. And then the detent, followed by the cap, the end cap. So as I'm exploring and using this ratchet, it does get hung up slightly, and the reason I noticed this is because as you push the blade up, as you extend the blade moves ever so slightly. It has to readjust in order to line up with this thin slot in the plastic. So it might take a few tries before I'm able to, there it is, get it through. Now, what's the cause of this? Remember that metal guide rail that I showed you? If that becomes out of alignment with this thin slot, that's where the blade can get hung up. So it's actually pushing against plastic as it's exiting this slot here. What I'm referring to is this blade is pushing on plastic and then causing the plastic to wear down on the in front of the guide rail. So now it's fine. All right, we'll take a closer look at some of these parts and how they're manufactured. So starting with the blade, each segment looks like it's laser cut, I would assume, but again, without taking a deep dive into the manufacturing process, that's my assumption here. Although it's laser cut, it's not fully cut all the way through the metal. You can kind of see the wavy indentations on the back side, so it's not cut all the way through. It does provide perforations, so you know exactly where to snap the blade. Moving on to the plastic part, looks like there's two cavities with a parting line down the middle on both sides, and then probably a core with draft angles, obviously. Following a similar approach, there's two cores and then a cavity as well, with a parting line down the side, cap. And now with this part, this was a little tricky. I would assume there's, you can see, I don't know if you can zoom in, but you can see a slight parting line here and here on the back side, but on the front side, it's pretty smooth. Core on both sides, ejection pin marks that I see here. This one's pretty neat. It's got a bunch of flexures here, here, and here in the center. The ejector pin mark being here. And then you have spring steel that is formed. So for the reassembly, take the guide rail, insert it back into the plastic housing. Make sure that it lines up with this detent here. That keeps the guide rail from backing out. Insert the spring detent into the middle part, and then that should snap in. So this part's a little tricky because you need to get this plastic spring bar, plastic flexure right in between the yellow snap and the spring. So carefully center it. That's how the sub-assembly goes together. Here goes the blade, followed by the detent. Line up the hole, like such, and the end cap. Bam, done.